Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The world has a point of view, and this worldly point of view is usually, almost always, focused on the world, focused on the self. It's a point of view that looks at existence as if existence dealt with our senses and our interaction with all that we see around us. If we look closely, and you don't have to look that closely to realize this, everybody passes, everybody dies, everybody disappears, everybody comes, grows, gets older, and disappears and goes somewhere. Where do they go? And when we ask the question, where do they go? We also ask the question, where do we go? And are we actually interested in where we go? Most people don't have a lot of interest in that. They're interested in living their life and consuming as much of the world as they can and obtaining as much of the world as they can. And in that, they believe that they will find satisfaction. They believe that they will find a cure to their ills. They believe that they will find peace and tranquility. And the problem is that they haven't been able to get enough of the world. Now, very, very often, there are some very, very rich people, and they end up in the same dilemma. They still haven't been able to find a cure for what ails them. They haven't been able to find peace. And what is the response that comes into their ear by the one who whispers? And the response is always the same. It's not enough. If you just get more. And that's why you see millionaires trying to become billionaires and billionaires to be trying to become the richest people in the world. They believe that through wealth, some sort of immense satisfaction can come. There are 7 levels of consciousness: sense, awareness, intellect, and judgment are the first 4. Sense and awareness and intellect are the interaction with the world and the problem-solving tool, which is our mind. And the ability to solve problems with our mind. The mind, however, is limited to interacting with the elemental world. It can't go to the spiritual world. To go to the spiritual world, you have to go beyond the mind. So the 4th level of consciousness is called judgment or assessment. And that is at the point where it says, is this all there is? I've done this already. I've done this before. I'm just adding and accumulating to what I've already done and gotten. Where am I going? What else is there? And then, if you're lucky, you get an interaction with wisdom. Wisdom is a point of view that's different than the worldly point of view. Wisdom is the point of view that comes from God's qualities. Now, in order to understand that point of view, you have to understand God's qualities. You have to understand that there is a formless nature to existence which consists of qualities which have no form. They're not made of the elements, yet they exist, and in truth, they are eternal, while the elemental qualities have a temporary existence. So you would think that that which you see, touch, feel, etc., has this eternal quality to it. And in fact, it's the opposite. It's that which you can't see that has the eternal quality to it. It's that which you can't carry. It has no weight. It can't be measured, that has the eternal quality to it. So compassion is a quality of God. As a matter of fact, he's known as Ya Allah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Ya Allah, the merciful and the compassionate one. And these are two of his qualities, but he has more. There is love, there is justice, and there are all of these qualities that give unto humanity. He is the sustainer, the nourisher, and the protector. He created us out of love. He created us because he wanted a creation that he could know, that could know him, and that a relationship could be built up with. So man has the mystery of God within him, and God has the mystery of man within him. Man thinks that he can have two different relationships, one with man and one with God. But in reality, God has placed himself within every man. No matter what religion you can talk about, the soul has been placed there by God, and the soul is a piece of God. So when man interacts with man, man interacts with God also. And if man is cruel to man, man is cruel to God. If man is dismissive of man, man is dismissive of God. If man separates himself from other men, man separates himself from God. If man puts restrictions on others, he's restricted himself from God. Man exists as a unity. All men are part of that unity. All men are part of God. And if we individually choose to separate ourselves from men because of religious differences, because of racial differences, because of color differences, because of caste differences, because of language differences, we have in fact set up artificial barriers between ourselves and our Creator, between ourselves and God. So we need to learn to be inclusive. We need to learn to accept all of mankind. And this is part of the true understanding of God's plan for us. He created us as a flower garden. He created us as many different colors and shapes and sizes, yet we're still all flowers. We're still all humans. We're still from that one species. There is but one species, and that one species has one mother and father, and that one mother and father was the core of the creation for all of existence. And when we learn to love every man as we love ourselves, then we can make a beginning towards finding out who our Creator was. It is said in Sufism, if you come to know yourself, you will come to know your Lord. So who is the self? Man walks around and sees himself as a body. And he spends all of his time with this body, dressing it and combing it and taking care of it and putting makeup on it. But in truth, we are not a body. We are a soul that happens to have a container that holds the soul. And this body is that container. But the body is not the essential thing. The soul is the essential thing. And when we begin to understand that the soul is the essential thing, then we begin to look at the world a little differently. Question: why are there monasteries? Why are there places where men run and hide from the world? Why are there places where men and or women cloister themselves from the world, where they cut themselves off from the everyday interaction of the world? Why do these places exist? Well, one of the reasons they exist is that over time, men have discovered that the frivolity of the world is not for them, that the carnival that goes on around us on a consistent basis is not for them. And they don't want to be involved in that carnival because the essence of things is our relationship to God. He created us. From him we came, and to him we return. And all the time that we spend on other things is time that we spend away from him. So men formed monasteries, and man began to go to these places to perform rituals or to do meditation or to begin to understand how to get closer to God. Now, in Sufism, one of the core understandings is that you have to have a mentor, you have to have a teacher, you have to have a guru, you have to have a sheikh, you have to have one who has experienced what it is that you're trying to experience. And through his experience, he will pass on to you what he has experienced. So wisdom, the ability to come to know God, the ability to get close to God, the ability to understand God's nature comes through nearness. Nearness to what? Nearness to God. And how do you get near to God? You get near to God by being near someone who is near to God. So in that nearness, you begin to change. Now, I myself lived with my sheikh for 14 years. And in those 14 years, I saw what God's qualities manifest as a human being were like. I saw what those actions were like. I saw what happened when those actions were put into reality, when they were brought into the world, when they were brought into being. And what happened is that a space was created that was different than every other space in the world. When you came to where the sheikh lived and you sat next to the sheikh, it was not the same as being anywhere else in the world. Now, it could be if you could carry that with you. But until you got to the point where you could bring that with you wherever you went, you had to go there in order to experience it. You had to go there for that resonance to surround you and for that resonance to pull you in and take you to the place where that came from. It is difficult to describe how that occurred, and it's difficult to describe how I came to notice it. But I will say this, it didn't take long to notice it. It didn't take long to know that when I was with the sheikh, things were different than when I was not with the sheikh. When I was with the sheikh, there was a peacefulness that came over me and everyone around me who was with him that just did not exist outside in the world. There was a protection that came. And recently, someone helped me with that with understanding that protection. That protection was in lots of different ways. But one of the ways it is when you're with the sheikh, your purity grows. The nature of your purity grows. And all of a sudden, things that are not appropriate for you. Things that shouldn't be done, you don't want to do. Things you shouldn't be involved in are not things you become involved in. The sheikh's face stops you from becoming involved in these things. The sheikh's presence stops you from thinking about these things. All of a sudden, you begin to understand the higher nature of things, and transcendent things have more beauty than non-transcendent things. The world lives off pushing at you different forms of lust. The world goes on by garnering different forms of lust and making you believe that they are important to you. You transcend the world by transcending your lust, by transcending your lust towards the elemental world and your attachment to the elemental world. And if you can bypass the lust of the elemental world and you can remove that from your own being, then you can begin to taste the transcendent nature of those things which are beyond the elemental world. As one is mired in the elemental world, compassion has no meaning, because lust is about consumption. Lust is a fire. Lust is a need. Lust is not something that gives. Lust is not something that is released from the glitters of the world. Lust keeps you trapped. And lust comes in many, many forms. It's not just sexual. It's lust for money. It's lust for power. It's lust for fame. It's lust for possessions. It's lust for gems. It's lust for houses. It's lust for cars. It's lust for toys. It's lust for movies. It's lust for children. There are countless, countless kinds of lust. It's lust for religion. It's lust to make your own religion more important than other religions. And people miss that one almost all the time because they think that that lust for religion brings them closer to God. And in fact, it pulls them away from God because it separates them from other men. It separates them from the other religions. It separates them from the other races. It separates them from the godliness that is all over the world and is surrounding everyone. And as long as we have that lust, it's very, very difficult for us to make headway. There are the satanic qualities and there are the godly qualities. And there are the neutral qualities. There are the qualities where you just sit still and don't do a thing. Well, just sitting still and not doing a thing is assisting the evil forces, because those who don't take action towards the positive are allowing the negative to exist and to remain in force. So one of Satan's great tools is to convince man that there's plenty of time and there's no need to do anything right away. Wait, you can start tomorrow. Wait, you can start next year. Wait, you can start in a while. The truth is, we need to make a commitment towards our own salvation. And we have to understand what it is we have to do in order to accomplish this. And what it is we have to do is take on Allah's qualities and imbibe them into us. And the core understanding of what these divine qualities are is they come from the light and they come from wisdom. And in order to have them, you have to change your point of view. You have to change the elemental point of view to the point of view of light. Now, just as an example, imagine yourself as a light being. Do you need a house? Do you need money? Do you need a car? Do you need elemental things? You don't need them because you're light. You travel in a different way. You communicate in a different way. You are beyond the need for shelter in the sense of shelter from the elements. You're beyond the need to consume elemental things because you're beyond that nature. Well, we are an elemental body with a light body within us. And we pay more attention to this elemental body than we pay to this light body. And it's when we begin to pay more attention to the light body than the elemental body that we will begin to transcend the elemental body and understand the light body. So, can we cut the tie to the magnetism of the elements? You see, because we have this elemental shell, because we have this elemental body, we are drawn to the elements naturally. But we have to cut the tie to our own body. So we have to cut the tie to our egoism. We have to cut the tie to our mind, which is at the core of our attachment to the world. We have to cut the tie to our desire, which is attached to the mind, and the two of them together are trying to swallow the entire world. It can't be done. Two bullfrogs were looking at each other and they wanted something and they both wanted the same thing. So they jumped at each other. One bullfrog opened its mouth and swallowed the other one. The other bullfrog kept expanding while it was being swallowed. And eventually both of them blew up because they were trying to swallow each other. We can't swallow the world. The world is too big to swallow. We will blow ourselves up. So the question is, why do we keep doing it? What is it that's driving us in that direction? What is it that makes men who have untold wealth try to get more wealth? What is it that makes men who have untold power try to get more power? What is it that makes men who have untold fame try to get more fame? It's the big lie that if you get a little bit more, things will change. If you get just a little bit more, then you'll finally get to the place where you want to get. Well, the truth is, none of these things can satisfy you. None of these things will satisfy you. And none of these things have within them what can satisfy you. Salam is the Arabic word for peace. And salam is one of the names of God. So peace is godly. Peace is not worldly. So if you want to find peace, you have to find peace within God. You have to find peace within God's qualities. And that's the only place where you can find peace. And this is the conclusion that we eventually have to come to. That for us to find peace within our being, we have to find God's qualities. We have to bring God's qualities into our being. And bringing those qualities into our being is not enough. After they're brought into our being, we have to act on them. The word compassion is a noun and a verb. The word mercy is a noun and a verb. In other words, they do things. Compassion does things. Compassion is an actor. Mercy is an actor. It's an action within the world. And it's Allah's mercy and compassion that maintains and sustains the world. Now, if we are truly going to have mercy and compassion, we can't just talk about it. We can't just sit and define it. We have to give mercy and compassion to others. So there has to be a connection between ourselves and others. And that's how God's qualities work. They come through you to others, and then the grace of Allah is spread in the world. But it's spread because you help spread it. It's spread because you give it. It's spread because you have taken that which is God's and given it to the rest of humanity. And God wants you to do this. And God says to you, my wealth is without end. It can't be diminished. Take as much as you want, but give it away. You can't hold on to it. You have to give it. You have to constantly give it. And when that happens, that's when the world begins to change. But right now, the world, for the most part, is mentally ill. There is so much mental disease in the world. If there wasn't mental disease in the world, would we be having these wars? If there wasn't mental disease in the world, would we be having these conflicts between religions? If it wasn't for mental disease in this world, would we be doing the things that we do? Would we be living a life as if this worldly life was immortal? Or would we be doing something to make sure that the eternal portion of our life comes into being, that the transcendent portion of our life has a place, that we can escape from this world into the light. It needs to be done. And it can't be said enough that man is mentally ill. Look at all of the different situations around the world right now where mentally ill people are trying to kill other people for the sake of power, for the sake of land, for the sake of wealth, for the sake of fame, for the sake of more of the world. Everybody's trying to swallow the world. It can't be done. We need more monasteries. We need more places for people to go to where they can remove themselves from the world. There was a group of Islamic scholars who were traveling through the United States, and they stopped at the fellowship to meet Bawa, and they spoke to him for a while. And I got to speak to one of these scholars afterwards. And we talked about a number of things. And then he said to me, he said, you know, what Bawa has done is he's created a monastery around you. He's created a monastery within the world. You're free to come and go, but in truth, you live as monks. You live as monks whose focus is on truth, and you go to earn your daily bread, but you always come back to the same place and to the same focus. And it's true. We were like a monastic order, but a monastic order in the world. And we have to do the same thing. As we live in the world, we have to be part of a monastic order. And what's it mean to be a monastic order? It means that our focus is towards God and not towards the world. And then it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter place or time. It just matters about intention and attitude and effort and what it is that you're trying to do, what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So we have to look at our own self, and we have to examine ourselves, and we have to say to ourselves, what is it we're trying to accomplish? What is it we're doing on that behalf? What is it that we're doing so that that which we intend will happen? But even further, because we knew the sheikh and we knew the sheikh's intentions, we have to say, what is it that we're doing to bring about the intention that the sheikh was trying to accomplish? Then you can go further. What is it that we're doing to bring about the intention that the prophet had for us? And what is it that we're doing to bring about the intention that Allah had for us? Imagine Allah has intended for you. He sent prophets who've intended for you. He sent sheikhs who've intended for you. He sent all these holy ones who've set up intentions for you. Now we have to pick up that intention and make it our intention. And it can't be enough to mouth the intention. We have to bring that intention into action. So we have to learn how to become godly in our actions, pure in our actions, sanctified in our actions, giving in our actions. We have to give up selfishness. We have to give up greed. We have to give up all the needs of the world, all the way to the need to exist. La ilaha illallah. I am not. He alone is. La ilaha illallah. I am not. He alone is. And as we focus on the fact that there is no duality in this creation, that all of it is one, then we understand that this appearing into truth is our highest goal. Disappearing into reality is the greatest thing that we can do. So we have to begin that work. I was talking to somebody over the weekend, and they said to me, a lot of these words are too confusing for me, and a lot of these understandings are too confusing. But what I can do is I can sit still and wipe away my thoughts and just wait for Allah to overwhelm me. And that's something we can do. Even if we can't understand anything, we can sit still, wipe away our thoughts, and wait for Allah to overwhelm us, disappear in our love for Him. If we can kindle that love and make that love stronger and stronger and stronger, that love will burn away all of the impurities within us and take us to that truth. It will take us to our Lord. It will bring us to that place of eternity, which is what the prophets intended for us, the Ketubs intended for us, and God intended for us. May it be so that that occurs for each and every one of us. May we understand the truth of that intention. May we make that our intention, and may we be able to do the work that fulfills that intention. Ameen, ameen, ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah.